boy, oh boy, oh boy. So, have you guys heard of this Spongebob episode that I'm going to be talking about today? Well, this is from season 13, and this is also season 13 is my fourth least favorite season of the entire show. It may be not as bad as season 7, 12, and 6, but there is one particular episode I think is just as bad, if not just as abysmal, as Choir Boys. As my recent rewatch of the show, of course, last year. And that episode being Friendsiversary. Yes, I dare say this might be the second worst episode of the entire show. Yes, worse than True for Square. At least with True for Square, at least I can point out the few more redeeming qualities about that pile of crap. Because, that special sucks hard anyway. But the thing with this episode, it has just as it's just, oh my goodness, it's just as bad as Choir Boys in my opinion, honestly, because it has the same problems that Choir Boys suffer through, honestly. It also has and it also has this thing that True for Square suffered through as well. So it has both aspects of both a horrible, abysmal, worst episode of the entire show, and a special that also is the worst of the show in general. But the reason why I think that Friendsiversary might be worse than True for Square and just as bad as Choir Boys is a few things. But before we get into those problems, I'll get into the plot first. So, what's the plot of this episode? The plot is about SpongeBob wanted to celebrate his Friendsiversary with Squidward, but after it goes way too far, Squidward decides to erase SpongeBob from his memories from Squidward. But once that happens, it turns out that SpongeBob's the only one that can know the formula safe combination in the Krusty Krab. So it's up to Squidward to reconnect his memories with SpongeBob. SpongeBob's memories with Squidward. I'm not kidding. It's just an episode of cartoon. Don't get too serious about one episode. Okay, so you know how my big problem with Choir Boys is that it was the pacing and also SpongeBob's characterization in an episode? Well, Friendsiversary does the exact same thing, but does it slightly more less? Okay, let me explain before I get into this pile of garbage, of trash episode. So, let's get into the problems with this episode overall. Number one, the references to no, not references. I'm not going to talk about the references yet. One big problem in this episode is the Squidward bothersome. Yes, this episode contains Squidward. This might be the second worst episode when it comes to Squidward getting bothered by SpongeBob or Patrick, because so the main reason why I think this episode is way worse is because the only reason why I think this episode is just as bad as Choir Boys is because of SpongeBob's characterization. SpongeBob's character in this episode is just as bad as Choir Boys. While I won't say it's as abysmal as him being a complete jerk in Choir Boys, but he is just stalking Squidward in this episode for no real reason in the first half of this episode. I know that he doesn't remember Squidward in the second half of the episode, but at the same time, there are some parts where SpongeBob acts very stalking towards Squidward in the first half of the episode, and it was until I think that I was actually rooting for Squidward to erase his memories for SpongeBob and SpongeBob's memories, because honestly, it's mostly justified and also kind of serves SpongeBob right for having memories of Squidward, having memories with Squidward overall, and also putting him through bothersome things that Squidward did not want to do, honestly. But here's the second problem in this episode overall. The second half of this episode. The second half of this episode is literally the worst part of this entire thing. So let me explain So remember I said about the plot in the first half about after after Squidward raises his memory, SpongeBob's memories with Squidward. It turns out, according to Mr. Krabs, that Sponge is the only one who knows the secret formula combination in the safe, and because he remembered it, he attached it to a memory he had with Squidward. He wants Squidward to, and Mr. Krabs demands Squidward to unerase Sponge's memories with Squidward. And let me tell ya, this 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 thing is what really really pushed my edge to putting this right beside Choir Boys. You're telling me that Sponge is the only one who has the freaking formula safe combination, and that he attached it to a memory he had with Squidward? Because of freaking course he did. So that means that Squidward has to go through more pain for no real reason because the plot demands him to. And let me tell ya, it was just so annoying to watch through the second half of this episode because it's just Squidward getting bothered for no reason. With forced nostalgia callbacks to episodes. Speaking of which, actually the big problem I have with this second half of the episode is that why this mom is the only one who actually knows the secret, knows the combination of the secret formula safe. Like, how come Mr. Krabs doesn't know it himself? He's literally the one who made the formula, who created the formula, who kept a secret formula in a bottle, and almost has his own safe. How stupid can you make Mr. Krabs be in this episode overall? Like, oh my goodness. How stupid can a character be if it's their thing, they should not be this stupid, honestly. And Mr. Krabs might be the stupidest he's ever been in this episode overall. Like, still, how? I'm still questioning how does that work, honestly, logic-wise. But, let's just move on. Third problem I have with this episode, big problem I have with this episode, is the callbacks. The first few callbacks are just repeated scenes from the episode itself, from the first half of the episode itself. And I will say, this is lazy and pretty pad out. You did not need, if you just transitioned into the nostalgia callbacks, it would have been fine, honestly. But you just reusing scenes for no real reason whatsoever. That is what I call stupid writing. Fourth big problem I have with this episode is the pacing. It is so frustrating to watch through, honestly. This is just as painful as Choir Boys, in my opinion, honestly. Because, at least I will admit, Choir Boys had more worse pacing, but, I mean, I didn't have to have much really positive with that episode either, but, yeah. But, the pacing in both this episode and Choir Boys, it might be the worst this show's ever been, in my opinion, honestly. Because both of these episodes have the worst pacing of the entire show. Slow, drawn-out scene for no real reason. It's just... How can you mess up the pacing in an episode overall? And this episode is written by Kaz, who's my second favorite writer of the entire show, right behind Aaron Springer. Another connection to Choir Boys. This, honestly... What's the fifth big problem in this episode? Well, the ending. Yes, the ending of this episode is atrocious. So, it turned out yesterday was not Squidward's Friendsiversary. It was today and stuff. And let me tell ya, this what really pushed me off the edge. This was the thing that honestly pushed me into thinking this is just as bad as Choir Boys, honestly. So that means Sponge's gonna do the same crap he did to Squidward the next day, and 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 the next day. It shows that Nickelodeon was doing way too hard with was trying to do way too hard with this episode. And I argue this episode might be just as bad as Choir Boys because this has a lot of the same problems as Choir Boys. The pacing sucks. Sponge's characterization sucks. The making me root for Squidward in both this episode and Choir Boys. Make me feel bad for both Squidward in this episode and that episode, and etc. Like, I don't know how to explain much this episode really just frustrates me, honestly. It's just annoying and just really frustrating to watch through. And also, fun fact, another big problem I have with this episode is that some of the some of the memories that Swim has are not even like memories the show has ever established before. For example, they accidentally referenced the episode for some reason. So while Square was looking through through a Kelpie G book or magazine, it turns out, or at least book, or I think it was a magazine, I believe, and he sees that it's a flash. It was just a reference to the episode Smooth Jazz and Bikini Bottom from season 8, which is the episode that many people, including me, don't like at all. So I'm wondering, why would Kaz reference that awful episode, honestly? Okay, I'm not gonna blame the writers on this one, but still, why would you do that? I think that's supposed to be error. That must be something that they rushed into the last second of the episode overall. Same way goes to nostalgic callbacks, which I'll get to that when I talk about the positive of this episode, what saves it from being absolutely trash as Choir Boys. But still, yeah, and I think that's all the main problems I have with not Choir Boys, Friendiversary, honestly. It's a frustrating, not really good, a really bad episode that honestly should not exist in season 13, honestly. Not to mention, season 13 has already it has the same amount of Squidward Gets Bothered episodes as season 6 and 12. Which that's not a good sign, which is not, and I argue that season 13 has worser episodes of Squidward Get Bothered because both this and Plain to See are the worst the worst of season 13 overall. And they're both pretty bad in general. They both are pretty bad episodes. So yeah, I'm noticing a pattern here. They're both trash episodes. Both of this and Choir Boys are trash episodes. Both this and Plain to See have a bigger has either Squidward Getting Bothered for no reason and an ending that really pushed it over the edge for me. So yeah. Friendiversary so far, it looks like it's the worst episode of the entire show, right? Well, not really, not necessarily. The thing that really didn't push it into like low bottom is that at least it doesn't make Spum look unlike. Actually, I'll give this to Friendiversary. Actually, I'll give it two positives I have in this episode overall. One is I think that's the references to past episodes are pretty fun, honestly, and I think that I don't mind references to past episodes because it's just fun to see in action overall. And the other big thing I like about this episode overall, when it comes to like personally positives, because unlike Choir Boys where I have no positives with that episode, this one only has two positives though. Which, yeah, that's not a good sign. And okay, I'll give one more positive I have. I do have also the other positive I have with this episode is that at least it uses locations. At least it doesn't drag out its jokes just as bad as Choir Boys does. And I'll give it also this as well. At least I'll say that the last thing I do like is that it does reference a few characters that are not from the show too often, such as the whale one student from such as the whale from the episode Sponge Guard on Duty from season 3. But yeah, that's about it. The rest of the episode is just abysmal, trash, garbage, piece of crap. It's like, yeah, I can't name anything. I don't know how to describe this episode, honestly. It's just a bad, terrible, abysmal, 0 out of 10 episode, and it's probably the second worst episode of the entire show. Honestly, I don't know how anybody can like this episode at all. I don't understand, honestly. How can someone like this episode, honestly? And, okay, so, actually, no. I have one more positive that I actually like about this episode, actually, before I give it, like, a full 0 out of 10. Or 0.5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. Okay, so, one thing I'll give this episode a little bit points for, is also the references past episodes. Those are pretty fun, and those are really great. And at least SpongeBob's behavior is not as atrocious as Choir Boys, in my opinion, honestly. But that's it. This episode is clearly a sign of how season 13 has a lot of bad episodes sometimes, and it's just as bad as season 6 and 7, season 7 and season 12 in my opinion, honestly. So yeah, not a really good episode in my opinion. Definitely the second worst of the entire show, and I could definitely see why some people might not like the show after season 13 overall, because even though season 14 is a decent improvement over season 6, 7, 12, and 13, it's still up there with season 8, season 10, and it's still up there with season 8, season 10, and season 14 in my opinion, honestly. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. What's my final score of this Friendiversary? Well, Friendiversary unfortunately is the second episode in a row that I have to give a 0 out of 10 to. Which is a real shame, because this could have been a really good episode if it was just a paying tribute to the fans and also was not a Squidward Gets Bothered episode. Because like I said, if you just cut out the Squidward Gets Bothered trope and moments, then maybe I would have liked this episode more. But no, this episode's garbage. I don't even know how people like this episode, honestly. I feel like this episode deserves more hate, in my opinion, honestly. I argue just as bad as Choir Boys. It has a lot of the same problems as Choir Boys, and I overall just don't like this episode in general. So yeah, like I said, 0 out of 10. Actually, no, I'll give it a 0.5 out of 10, honestly. I'm not giving it full 0 because at least it has a 2 or even 3 redeeming qualities to it, honestly. But like I said, that's not redeeming the episode overall. It's still atrocious as all get out. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. What's your thoughts on Friendiversary as an episode? Do you guys agree with my opinion? Do you guys think this episode also sucks? Tell me in the comments below. And probably, actually, you know what? Go rewatch this episode and see how abysmal this episode is, in my opinion, honestly. Because I think this is just as bad as Choir Boys, in my opinion, honestly. Like, this is just my opinion, and I hope you guys don't take it too seriously. Because like I said, it just has a similar problem with Choir Boys, where it just wasted time for no real reason whatsoever. And they're both 11-minute episodes. So yeah, both episodes are bad, and honestly, they're both the worst episodes of the entire show, honestly. They're both up there with the worst episode of the entire show. So thank you guys for watching. Do you guys agree? Comment down below and tell me what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Cartoon Retro, please out.